warmly welcome Apolline. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Good evening, everyone. So my name is Apolline Blandin, and I'm a full-time researcher at Center for Alternative Finance. If I speak too fast, please tell me. I have a tendency to do so. Apparently, it's a generation issue. So for those of you who are not familiar with the Center for Alternative Finance, what we do, it was created in 2015, initially looking at P2P lending and crowdfunding. And then in 2016, they decided to bring in a new research team to look at cryptocurrency and blockchain. So this research team is essentially two people, so Mike and I. And what we do is essentially two things. So we have a benchmarking study for cryptocurrency. So we reach out to companies via online survey and we try to assess the development of the ecosystem, see if there is an emerging trend, which are the new actors, etc. And we have a second benchmarking study, which exclusively looks at enterprise blockchain and how it is being adopted within established companies and corporations. But tonight I'm going to give you a brief overview of a recent study we published, which is the Cryptoasset Regulatory Landscape Study. So it's a global empirical analysis of 23 jurisdictions. So we selected these 23 jurisdictions based on the level of cryptoasset activity and the level of regulatory activity. And we collaborated with about 20 people based across the world, people who were regulatory experts from their jurisdiction. And the outcome is, as Michael said, a 100-page report, which I still think is pretty long, but still interesting. So obviously I'm not going to dive into all the aspects of the report, but to give you a brief idea, this is how it is structured. So we start with a theoretical conversation, discussion about the main concepts around cryptoassets. Then we move on to the comparative analysis of these 23 jurisdictions. And from this comparative analysis, we identify the key challenges that remains for regulators and the industry as well. And section 4 is just a deep dive into each jurisdiction analysis. Okay, so to give you a brief idea of the key findings, the first one, and the most obvious one, is that there is no standard usage of definition and terminology across regulators and across jurisdictions. So what we did is we looked at official statements from regulators, and what we saw is that virtual currency has been the first term used by regulators, but it has been often used interchangeably with other terms like digital currency, cryptocurrency. But there is no standardized term. But then from 2016, which is the date when the FATF published its first AML and KYC guidance about virtual currency, we saw that there is more new terms being adopted by regulators, which kind of suggests that there is a refined understanding of the space by regulatory authorities. And so if you take the example of the term cryptoasset itself, it's really interesting because there have been many attempts by regulators, but also by academics, industry participants to define the boundary of the term. And very often, these interpretations can be classified in three main views. So you have the broad view, which basically encompasses any type of digital asset issued and transferred via any type of DLT system. Then you have the intermediate view, which is, again, any type of digital asset, but exclusively issued and transferred via an open and permissionless DLT system. And then you have the narrow view, which is the one we refer to in our work, which are referring exclusively to native digital asset issued and transferred via the open and permissionless DLT system. So what we mean by native, it means that the token, the digital asset, plays an essential role in the functioning of the network. And the best example of this is Bitcoin. So why this is important? I think it's important because there is a risk otherwise to conflate form and nature. I'm not going to dive into the detail of this table, but the main idea is that to put an asset on a blockchain, on a DLT system, doesn't change its legal nature. So if you put a conventional asset, being it financial or non-financial, on a DLT system, again, the legal nature will remain the same. Now the true novelties lie with these crypto assets under the narrow view, which have this new functionality within the system. Okay, let's move away from the theoretical conversation and dive into the comparative analysis. So the first thing we were interested in was to understand when the regulatory authorities started to look at cryptoassets. And so we analyzed the first official statement of 40 jurisdictions, so we slightly extended the sample. And what we saw is that for the majority of jurisdictions, the first official statements were issued in 2013, which is also the year when the market experienced the largest bubble since the inception of Bitcoin. Now, when looking at the first regulatory authorities that responded to cryptocurrency issues, it was mainly the central bank. So for 30% of these jurisdictions, it was the central bank, followed by the Ministry of Finance or the AML regulator. Then we wanted to understand how do regulators shape their regulatory response to new-to-market activities. So they have many options available to them, such as public and private consultation with industry participants, cooperation with intergovernmental bodies, but also other regulators. But what we saw is that a lot of jurisdictions have been carefully monitoring what was happening in other jurisdictions with often a large level of cryptoasset activities, and kind of replicates the same approach. So here, for instance, we looked at when the issuance of a guidance to distinguish between a cryptoasset that qualifies as a security and a cryptoasset that doesn't qualify as a security. And so the US, the SEC in July 2017 was the first regulator to do so, and a lot of jurisdictions have followed through afterwards. Then to analyze the regulatory response of these jurisdictions, we actually classify the regulatory response into 4 main categories. So the first one is what we call existing regulation, which is basically the application of existing regulation or law to cryptoasset activities. An example of this would be the application of securities law in the US, or the application of the Financial Instrument Act in South Korea to cryptoasset activities. Then we have retrofitted regulation. It's when an existing law or regulation is being amended to include cryptoasset activities. Again, an example of this would be Japan, which amended its Payment Status Act to bring cryptoasset exchange under the scope of the regulation. The third category is bespoke regulatory framework. So that's when a completely new regulatory framework is being enacted, established, to regulate a large set of activities. But cryptoasset activity would just be one part of this newly regulated activity. An example would be Mexico, which released in March 2018 a law to regulate financial technology institutions, which regulates crowdfunding along with cryptoasset activities. And finally, the fourth category is bespoke regulation, and that's when a completely new law or regulation is being enacted to specifically regulate cryptoasset activities. Again, Thailand in May 2018 released this royal decree for the regulation of digital asset businesses, which exclusively regulates virtual asset businesses. So with this framework in mind, we extended it to a sample of 108 jurisdictions. So we used for this a report published by the US Law Library of Congress. And I think the key finding from this chart is that, then we classify the jurisdiction between high level and low level of cryptoasset activity. And yeah, the key finding from this chart is really that jurisdictions with the highest level of cryptoasset activities have adopted the retrofitted approach, which means that this is the quickest solution to respond to the influx of new-to-market activity. Interestingly, jurisdictions with the most sophisticated framework are often pretty small jurisdictions with a history of very flexible regulation for businesses. So just to name a few, for instance, Bermuda, Gibraltar, etc. Now, to understand under which law these activities are actually being regulated, we went back to this small sample of 23 jurisdictions and we examined all the laws that could apply to cryptoasset activity. The main point is that first, regulators are primarily interested or looking at what's happening in terms of distribution and exchange of cryptoassets. And this distribution is mainly ICOs. Another idea is that most of them have brought this activity under securities law, but that only applies when a cryptoasset qualifies as security. And finally, a lot of jurisdictions that have developed a bespoke regulatory framework or bespoke regulation have been interested in the exchange and the storage of cryptoasset activities first. Okay, so we saw that there is a lot of response from regulators, a lot of attention on what's happening in the space, but there are still many regulatory challenges ahead, some of which have to deal with the mapping of cryptoasset activities, because when we reviewed the different regulation and legislation, we saw that a lot of cryptoasset activities were completely overlooked, such as different distribution mechanisms, ICOs have been looked at, but airdrop, fork, other types also of cryptocurrency, so very few regulators actually mention stablecoins or privacy coins. And then there is another set of challenges that has to deal with the fact that there is no clear boundary between the different regulatory parameters. And so there is a need clearly to come to an agreement over terminology, the definition, but also under which regulators is our cryptoasset activities regulated. Thank you. And if you have any questions,